Okay, so this is a video I've been wanting to make for some time. And this is a video I'm hoping will be the first in a series of ones that I do using this interface for people who I'm trying to help get better at chess. Right now, that includes my lovely girlfriend, Jennifer Robin, Tim Eiting, David Buckles. But this is a game between Siegbert Tarrasch, who is one of my favorite chess characters, one of my favorite chess players, and someone by the name of von Scheve. This game is in Irving Chernev's 62 or the most instructive games ever played, or something like that. I don't remember how many it is, but it's Chernev, who is one of the great chess authors, very prodigious. He wrote a ton of books. They're medium quality, but they're very good for beginners, especially. Anyway, Tarrasch was a very arrogant guy. He's so fun, but he also had this extremely rule based. He's very German in the sense that there's a right way to do things, and you do it this way, you do it this way, you do it this way. And this game is one of these excellent examples of a kingside attack. That's what the title of this chapter is: the kingside attack. And it's my favorite thing to do in chess is a kingside attack. And so I thought it would be really good to go through it. The most instructive thing you can do to get better at chess, other than playing against masters, is to study master games. I mean, that's the real way you get better at chess, is you study master games. You see what good moves look like and why, and then that's how you get better. So let's just go through this game, and we'll see how it goes. So Tarrasch opens with d4, and d4, of course, is the one of the two most common opening moves, along with e4. d4 is called more positional, meaning it tends to be a little slower. It doesn't have the same rapid fire speed that an e4 opening does. You can see that there's a lot more initial activity available in an e4 opening. Plus, oftentimes, because black will often develop the e5 pawn, white can start developing and attacking very, very soon in an e4 opening. d4 openings, right? d4 openings are a little bit more solid, usually thought to be, because the pawn is defended by the queen, and so it's not easy to attack. I mean, you can try to attack it, but it's not an easy thing to attack. So the thing is, though, just because d4 tends to lead to more positional, long-term, longer strategy games, doesn't mean it's any less aggressive. It's just aggressive in a different way. There's a difference between fencing and moving a tank, right? And I think d4 is more of the tank style. So von Scheve plays d5, which is one of the two major responses to d4. They both of the major responses to d4 target the e4 square, and they both seek to pressure the center. Of course, d5 does it by attacking these two squares, and knight f6 does it by attacking these two squares. Knight f6 attacks these two squares, so still about the center. So c4, this is called the Queen's Gambit. It's not really a gambit. There are two major ways in which you can deal with this. You can either accept the gambit. This is the Queen's Gambit, accepted. Or you can decline it, and there are many ways to decline it. The most popular being what's called the Slav defense and the Orthodox defense, and this can lead to a lot of different lines and variations. You can also play knight f6, but this is not necessarily as good because you're inviting this capture. If the queen captures, you're inviting him to win a tempo, and if the knight captures, then you're inviting e4, which establishes a strong pawn center from the very beginning, which, by the way, this line, if you look at the computer, white is better, but again, it's not lost or anything, but it's just not a pleasant position. So with the gambit, right? A gambit means you're giving up a pawn. The more famous of the two, or the more famous as a gambit game is the King's Gambit. It's called the King's Gambit because it begins with the King's pawn, and then you play this pawn next to the King's pawn. And in the King's Gambit, you usually accept, right? But the interesting thing is this is a true gambit because it's not easy for white to recapture this pawn and to get the material back. you can try to get it back, but what black can do, black can immediately try to hold on to this pawn and fight for it. It's not necessarily easy to get this pawn back. White is looking to establish a center. After d4, to establish this strong center and to get pieces out quickly, right? The bishop goes to c4 to attack this. The king castles, the rook goes to the f file, right? So, I mean, there's all sorts of attacking possibilities for white in this position. But the advantage for black is he gets to hold on to this pawn. It is not easy to win back. The same is not true in the queen's gambit. In the queen's gambit, if black takes, there's absolutely no way this pawn can be defended. You can try to defend it, but the fact of the matter is that there's just simply not a useful way to defend this pawn. You can try to hold on to it, but what happens after a4 is, if you take, right, he'll take, and this pawn's going to fall, right? It's not going to be able to be sustained. Or, right, if you try to defend it, something like this, right, pawn takes pawn, queen f3 wins the rook. And if you try it something like this, right, pawn takes pawn, if pawn takes pawn, rook takes rook, right? It's actually not, so the queen's gambit isn't much of a gambit in the sense that you usually don't take it because white does not have to actually give up any material at all in this position, which is why it is much more popular on both the master level and on the club level to actually decline it. So this is the queen's gambit's declined, and there are a lot of different ways in which white can proceed, right? There's the knight f3, which is very solid, knight c3, which adds pressure, immediate extra pressure to d5. You can play something a little bit more offbeat. You can play bishop here, right? This bishop move is not quite as good because, as you see by these arrows, black can offer a trade of bishops right away, and that exchange, either way, this exchange gives black some free development, and this exchange, doubles some pawns, and if you just move back, right, then you gain a tempo. I've kind of thought about this one, this line. I've thought about this line a little bit, and just to wonder if there's anything to it. The reason why I look at this line is because if you'll notice, both of these pawns are on dark squares, and they can be undermined, right? It's not the hardest thing to undermine them. You can undermine them there. You can undermine them at the base of the chain. But I think because you get this tempo, right, and I'm not entirely sure where black goes with this queen. Probably just all the way back in order to come this way. But the point is that you've traded bishops, and now white has this idea where he can try to push pawns this way, and the idea is he can have a queenside attack this way with his pieces, and basically with all these pawns on dark squares, it gives a lot of room for your light squared bishop to run, while his light squared bishop has to deal with some temporary blockage of his own pawns. So, I mean, again, this is probably a terrible line, but it's just something I've thought about. It's something I've thought about, like, especially when you're playing in blitz, like thinking about ways in which you can maybe try to do something that people haven't seen or done before. So I'm just looking at this, c3. It'll probably absolutely hate this move. Yeah, it just says this move makes the game even. And it's probably going to say, yeah, it just wants you to undermine the pawn chain right away. And you can't, the reason why you can't do this is this capture, right? You don't have this capture back, because of the pin. And so, I mean, I guess you go here, and then black's development is just fine. I mean, if he's already solved his light squared bishop problem, there's no real issue here. for black. I mean, he can very comfortably develop and probably get an advantage even with this structure. So it was worth a thought, right? It was worth a thought too. But the reason why I show you this is because these are the kind of opening ideas people have in chess, right? They're thinking about, how can I arrange the pieces so I can get a little bit more speed or a little bit more. But Tarrasch ends up going with this move. He goes with knight c3, the more direct, the more direct developing move. And von Scheve makes this very natural response, right? You attack d5 again, he defends d5 again, right? So now it's defended twice. It's actually it's attacked twice. It's actually defended 3 times, because you have to remember that the queen is on there as well. But the idea is you're just reinforcing the center, and this is why these games can be slow. You know, there's just a ton of pressure on these positions. So one very famous move here is the bishop g5 move. This is the Pillsbury move, and the idea is it puts indirect pressure on the d pawn. Indirect meaning, if it pins the knight, that does remove one of the defenders of this pawn, because the knight is no longer defending it if it's pinned against the queen. Günzburg and Tarrasch and many other masters really thought this move was terrible. And one of my favorite incidents in chess history was that Tarrasch, who was one of the people who really thought this move was stupid, he actually got beaten with it in Hastings in 1895, which was just a year after this game. So it's kind of fun that this is an aggressive move that can work. But Tarrasch goes with what the mainline move of the day is, and that is knight f3. And this move is very simple, right? You're just pressuring the center, getting your pieces out. There's an adage in chess, knights before bishops. And the adage in chess, knights before bishops, simply refers to the fact that you oftentimes have a better idea where your knights need to be before you're entirely sure about where your other pieces need to be. Another perfectly strong and valid move in this position is just the simple e3. The simple e3, you know, you're ready to take back on c4. But the main disadvantage of this move should be obvious. It blocks in the queen's bishop, right? And this queen's bishop, this dark square bishop, if he can't participate in the game, then one of the main problems is the fact that it's just being used as a defensive piece. And that can be a real issue. But that move is playable. That move is also playable. Also playable, and this might seem like a really strange move, and I'm going to turn on the machine for this because I think this move is playable. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, it hates this move, f3. The idea of f3 is to prepare e4. This move can be popular in certain King's Indian type of games, but I don't think it likes it because the reason why the computer doesn't like this move is the proper response to something like f3 to prepare e4 to even go more toward the center is the fact that black can play c5, striking at the center immediately. This is a very, very good move in these kind of positions. And especially if a white takes, that only helps. And now you've got a bishop on this weak diagonal, and you end up having to play passively just to defend it. And now by this point, black is already better and is already more developed. I mean, the computer says black is even material, but is already +2. I mean, that's how bad this can be. But the reason why I suggested this, in other situations where you don't have this problem with c5, this move can be an interesting move toward the center. This is the move I still like to play in blitz. And the reason why I like to play it is because people, they just kind of know this is bad, but they don't know why, and they oftentimes fail to figure out how to punish it. So what I'll often do is something kind of silly like this, and I'll follow it up with, you know, pawn up, bishop up, really kind of strange moves people don't expect, and then only eventually e4. You know, these kind of slower developmental moves, they can really do a lot for you if the person doesn't know what to do or how to respond. Sorry about this, guys. I'm getting a text message from Robin, and I am making this video for Robin, so it's kind of awkward. So it's like, how do I tell her, hey, I'm busy, just for a sec. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pause this video. I guess I'll make it like a series of videos, because one of the great things is I got my account registered on YouTube, so I can make it over 15 minutes now. So this is just over 15 minutes anyway. So I'm going to upload this video, and then I will continue with the lecture right from where we left off. And I'm sorry about all the digressions, but this is a lot of fun for me, whether it's fun for you guys watching it or not.